Reviewing French countertenor Philippe Jarousky's performance last December at the Barbican Centre in London, one critic wrote, "What a voice! Jaroussky propels a sweet, euphonious, versatile sound that whether in first gear, sotto voce, or spitting out notes up by the ozone layer at the speed of sound, never fails to be anything but exquisite." Of Mr. Jarousky's performance earlier this year with Apollo's Fire, the Cleveland Baroque Orchestra, Donald Rosenberg of the Cleveland Plain Dealer said, "Jarousky's countertenor is a thing of silken beauty that he uses with ultra-refined musicality. His voice is capable of caressing phrases, dropping to a hush, and soaring on impassioned wings." Although Philippe Jaroussky did play a few dates in the United States back in January, including his presentation of a program of late 19th century French song at Carnegie Hall, he's still largely unknown to American audiences. However, the 32-year-old sopranist countertenor, as he is called, has been performing to great acclaim in Europe since his debut in France in the summer of 1999. Today, on the front row, Philippe Jaroussky speaks with KUHF's Chris Johnson about his unique voice, his development as a musician, and his choice of repertoire recordings.
Philippe Jaroussky, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. Welcome to the front row.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And there are so many things that we could talk about. I'd like to start with some more personal information, something about you and your development. When did you discover your voice type?
Oh, my voice type, I discovered quite late, in fact, because a lot of people are thinking that I was singing quite a lot as boy, and finally not. I started with violin, and after piano, and finally I discovered my countertenor voice in the same times quite late and quite very early, because I was 18 years old, and I went to a concert of a French sopranist called Fabrice Di Falco. He was singing, this type of the most famous arias for castratos, for Farinelli, famous arias by Handel. And I was really impressed and moved by this performance. And in the same time, I really had this huge shock, and I thought, I think I can do the same thing. I think because, I was singing in this register, but by game, not absolutely. I couldn't think that it could be serious. Uh-huh. And finally, when I discovered this, I went to this concert. I suddenly realized that there is a marvelous repertory for this type of voice, and I was not so comfortable, by instrument. I was quite complexed by my age, because I started the violin at 11,
Oh.
And finally, when I started to sing at 18 years old, everybody told to me that I was quite young. Then that for me, that was much more comfortable, and I could feel that I have the time necessary to progress, and I was much less nervous.
Had you done much singing up to that point?
No, up to that point, not at all, in fact. I have this instinct to sing as a countertenor. At the beginning, I was quite very light. I had quite a very light soprano voice, practically like a boy. I had some facilities to do some coloratura things, high notes, but my voice was very, very, very light. And I needed more than 5-6 years to really have a voice which much more colors than the beginning. It took time for me to have a more richer register, I think.
Oh
I'm wondering, was it the repertoire or the voice type that attracted to you, or is it both?
I think I was attracted by high notes, maybe because I was a violinist.
Yes, sure.
Sure, but of course, finally, as a modern instrumentalist, finally, I didn't know very well this Baroque repertory. And finally, I discovered this repertory in singing it. Finally, as a violinist, I knew only the sonatas by Bach or the Four Seasons by Vivaldi, you know.
Sure.
And finally, I didn't know all these operas by Vivaldi, by Handel. I remember that my first shock was on TV when I heard and saw Anne Murray singing Ariodante by Handel, for example. And I was completely fascinated by the powerfulness of this music. And finally, that's the boss. And finally, when I started to sing 2 years after, I was engaged in my first opera production. I was 20, I was very young. And I had this chance to do the 3 operas by Monteverdi, quite early, finally. And, of course, I practically didn't sing Monteverdi before.
Yeah.
And that's why and finally I had this chance to discover quite early all this first Baroque music, and finally I like the both. I like really the 17th century and 18th century Baroque music a lot, of course.
I want to go to this idea of singing with your whole body because, I've watched a lot of videos of you on the internet, and it's quite obvious that you are singing with your whole person. Could you say more about that?
Yes, and in fact, what is difficult, of course, you don't have to sing only with your throat because it's dangerous. It's a question also to your body is very talented, in fact. But if you cut the contact with your body and just speaking with your brain, your singing can be maybe too much intellectual. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's a very complicated thing because finally, if you are very quiet and you are really thinking all the things, all the notes, all the musical things you want to do in advance, finally your body is ready to assume that, And finally, it's true that sometimes, I'm moving a lot, sometimes on stage, and people is thinking that it's because I'm very relaxed. But finally, sometimes it's also the contrary, Sometimes you are relaxed because you are not moving, and you can have a better control on your voice if you are moving less. And it's a mixture of different things, to move or not to move. Of course, your body has to be free to express himself, but sometimes if you are moving too much, you can also lose the control on your voice. Then you are ready to keep the contact with the earth,
Yeah.
And that's something that I think as a singer or as a musician and even as an actor, you have to work all your life,
Sure.
It's not one. You have always to put it again. each morning, each week, you have really to think about this practically all the time to find finally a good balance. What is difficult, I think, in music is to find the good balance between energy and to be relaxed. Because if you are too much relaxed, you cannot express some tension in music. And if you have too much energy, you can lose your control. And this balance is really what I'm looking for all the time.
How much of your time do you spend in a library doing research?
Yes, of course. I think as a Baroque interpret, I think we have this chance to have practically an infinity of pieces to sing. And finally, as a Baroque interpret, we have really to be curious. And for me, it's one of my greatest pleasure is to find my own repertory and, of course, to go to libraries. And, more you are going to libraries, more you have new ideas of concerts, of CD programs and things like this. Because sometimes you are looking for something and you are discovering something else,
Sure.
And what is amazing, that's why I'm quite proud about this, and I'm trying to keep time to do my research myself. Of course, I could ask to musicologists or people like this to find music for me. But I think, of course, maybe I'm taking more time to do it myself. But I have a very special pleasure when I'm discovering myself one area who was not sing before and say I will be the first to record it or to sing it, and it's something it's giving me a very different energy on stage to try to convince people that this music is interesting. I think it's really different than, for example, to play or to sing the most famous repertories.
Do you spend a lot of time traveling to different locations to do research?
Yes, of course. I'm most of the time I'm trying first to find things in Paris because it's more simple.
Okay.
And Paris has an incredible collection of Italian music.
Okay.
And sometimes when I can also that's so easy now with internet. You can also order things. And I'm always more and more looking for music in internet because you can find more and more manuscripts and Baroque music with in this media, and that is fantastic. Because
really?
You can stay at home and
that's great.
and have a look on manuscripts which is in Napoli or in Venezia, and that's really cool. But of course, sometimes I'm traveling in Italy or in Germany or to find a new scores. Piangevo sentire l'onda del